pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. Have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Robbins.
Here.
Commissioner Rushton. Present. Chairman Bunnick.
Here.
Commissioner Wessel is absent today for this meeting. Commissioner Sotis-Little. Here. Commissioner Elgay. Here. Commissioner Lautner is going to be coming but late.
Yeah, she texted me and her board meeting is running late, so she'll be here as soon as she can.
And I would say with Commissioner Wessel, that's with notice.
With notice, okay.
So then that would then bring us to public comment. Is there any public comment at this time? Seeing none, then move up to commissioner comment. Just that Commissioner Lautner will be a little bit late. She called. She's in another meeting at this time. She'll be here as quick as she can. And Mr. Wessel's here on Zoom, for comment. So then that would then bring us to the purpose of the meeting. And on the first, we have the review of the American Rescue Plan. And the first item is home stretch project update.
I'm sorry, before we get there, can I just interrupt and have Ron come up here and introduce our new IT technician? Because, well, I'll let him speak and her speak.
Her first appearance. Hopefully not her last. This is Leanna Wilson. She's our new hire for the IT position that I'm vacating here soon, I hope. And she came to the top of the list of, I think it was 30 applicants.
We have very strong pool candidates.
Okay, so Leanna has worked at Grand Traverse County for what, 16 years?
16 years.
Yep, so she worked in the private sector for, I think, the last 5. And kind of getting back into the government. She knows quite a few of the applications that we are already using. So anything you want to say, Leanna?
Just that I'm happy to be here and looking forward to many years at Leelanau County, and if there's anything I can do to help, you just let me know.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
We're able to steal all the good ones from Grand Traverse, so.
Trip planned next week to Arizona, so I want her to bring her in here today, and she won't be here at the board meeting next week, but
Poor thing.
yeah. Yeah, and well, Ron mentioned we had a very strong pool of candidates. We interviewed six people,
Yeah.
and then did a final round, and then did a testing too through Safety Net. And she was on top of the list every step of the process. And so we're very excited to have her here. And background, she's one of those crazy people that runs marathons too. So I thought that was pretty impressive. An IT person that could run marathons. Not too many people could probably do that. And how many marathons have you done?
I've done 2, and lots of other races in between.
Yeah, so something unique about her. What her background, Grand Traverse County, was just something natural fit to transition. And Ron is going to be working with her through 2024, right? Ron, you said?
No.
No.
I've already pushed it 1 month.
Yeah.
I don't have that much time to absorb all your knowledge.
Well, that'd be nice for her to come and at least say hi.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Nice to meet you all.
Welcome, and I'm really glad for you too.
Yeah, it's time.
And you see the smile?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, well, it wasn't an agenda, like I said, she won't be here next week, but I wanted to give you a chance to meet her and want to wait till April.
Can I ask a question? So with Commissioner Wessel via Zoom, you said he is present for comment. Is he going to be participating in any board motions or votes?
No, you cannot, yeah, cannot.
I just wanted clarification.
Yeah,
Thank
if you have any roll call votes or anything, you cannot call upon.
Okay, thank you.
So then that brings us to, are there any other questions about it? So we move on to home stretch update.
I'm John with Homestretch, and I brought Leah, my assistant and our property manager. So I wanted her to be part of this. She's been with us for about 2 weeks now. So we're going to kind of break her in slowly. I do have a presentation put together. It's a Zoom presentation, and I'm going to share my screen if that's all right. Yeah, I'm trying to get the. Okay, there it goes. Okay. This is adapted from a presentation I made to MISTA about 4 months ago. And their criteria was pretty strict how I had to go through and present the project. This was for the MOD program that they put out last year. So I wanted to start out with identifying our capacity. To date, Homestretch has invested about 19 million, almost $20 million in affordable housing throughout the Grand Traverse region. That's since 1996, since inception. That includes 2 projects, one on 8th Street and then the new project that we're doing in Honor. So I'm including that in that 19,963,000. We're a 12-member board. We're governed. We are a directorship, and I am the director. So all the projects that we have in our pipeline come through me, get vetted by the board. They decided whether or not we would go forward with the project, because each project does contain quite a bit of expenditure. You know, and each project is probably going to absorb about 40 to 50,000 in pre-development costs. So it's vital that they have a say, that they vet the property to make sure that it's going to pass muster if we go forward with that kind of cash. I know Habitat in the past has tried to spend money on projects in the village of Suttons Bay. They spent about $20,000 or so. The project did not go through. Luckily, they were able to get some reimbursement by selling the property in conjunction with the land bank and then taking the additional proceeds for another project. So we can't take it lightly that we invest in a project. You know, if we do, it really has to go forward, because we can't lose $20,000 or $30,000. But moving forward, this presentation, I'm going to go over just briefly Alice, a little study about Housing North, a market study demand for our project, our own demographics that we have in-house, then the Vineyard View Apartments, which is what we're here today to ask funding for. Then I have the floor plans for that construction, and then a Seeds youth training that I'll just touch upon at the end. Alice, as we know, is asset limited, income constrained, and employed. And most of our tenants are employed. They have some kind of employment, and it can be from assets in the bank that generate cash. It can be from pension, Social Security, or disability. And that's one of the first questions that we ask our tenants if they're applying. We ask them, you know, how many people are in the household and what kind of income do you have? And that's a vetting process throughout all of our applicants that we have to go through, whether or not we're going to send them an application to apply or not. But that translates to, you know, percentages. Leelanau County households, 37% are in this Alice category. And it's due to a lack of affordable housing, we feel, and so does other constituents like Housing North. Their study shows in our category between rents of $650 to $1,000, we need almost 300 units in our county alone. It goes up at the upper income strata, but we really concentrate on the lower income from 26 to 40,000 annual income. our own market study demand that we did for this project filters down to project specifics. And we clearly demonstrated that there is sufficient demand. Our lenders use this study. We use it for absorption rates. We use it to prove that our projects are viable. So the numbers bear out. All of our funding sources agreed with this. They took that to heart and were able to approve our permanent financing. When we look at, and this is something that Leah and I talked about, it's pretty important to show, you know, our applicants, who are they? And these are actual data that we put together this past week. Under 20, right now, we have 2 adults with minors that are applying. We have 21 applicants aged 20 to 50, and then 16 applicants that are 50 years and older. Now that's kind of just pre-approved applicants in our portfolio right now that are looking for housing, and they're being told it's going to be a year to year and a half to actually house these people. We could load this up with a lot more, but we vet them, we approve them, so that we're not inundated with more applications than we need to deal with. So I thought that was important to lay out. This is Grand Traverse County and the region around, right, Leah? Mm-hmm. Okay. So of that makeup, you can see we've got the biggest categories being single adults. And that tells us, well, maybe we should be building 1 bedrooms. The next category in line is the families. So between those 2, we sort of try to make sure that we can cover both bases. And that's why we've done 2-apartment townhouses. The 2-bedroom apartment townhouses do satisfy a single person and a couple maybe with children, up to 4 people. Building 1 bedroom or studios, it is expensive. It takes up a little bit more land. So we've sort of clung to the 2-bedroom townhouse, and you can have a guest over, you can have a caretaker stay in the 2nd bedroom. But there's another demographic that shows you who most need the housing in our area. Here's a new slide that we put together too that shows the number of employed and the number of unemployed. It's about 50-50. Of the employed, you can see their categories of income, and it runs the gamut. We have 1 person that makes less than $1,000 a month. We'll probably try to house them in a unit that has a project-based voucher that will pay their rent up to 30% of their income is all they'll pay. So the balance of that will be paid by the voucher. And the vouchers are really important. There's mobile vouchers, which are housing choice vouchers, and we accept those. A lot of landlords don't, because they don't want that sort of clientele. They don't want the headache of a housing choice voucher tenant. We accept them, and we actually get more rents from them because the voucher pays 110% of fair market rents. On the other categories, there's 3 retired, 15 on Social Security, and other is 4. Remember what the other was?
It was just other income that they had. There was like a spousal support. There was a SNAP, which I'm unfamiliar with so far. I can't recall off the top of my head right now the other 2.
Okay, but you can see that the unemployed, they do have some type of income to bring to the table, and we'll work with them. And if they show a good credit report and they show that they're a viable, they have a viable history of tenancy in the past, we'll take that into consideration. You know, normally you want to see they have 30% of their income go to their housing. Well, we can stretch it a little bit if they have all their ducks in a row and their credit is good. We'll work with them. Plus, it's the right thing to do. I don't want anybody to become overburdened with housing, but having housing is probably the #1 priority for these folks. MISTA required in this program for the mod program that 51% of the area has eligibility, and that's within a demographic of ranging between 30 and 80% AMI. That's the reality of Leelanau County. That's the category that they want to see at least 51% of those in that income bracket in that county that they're going to invest. In fact, our county shows 55% of the market area of households are income eligible in Leelanau County. So we actually get 4% above that threshold. So here's the project. It was an RFP from the Leelanau County Land Bank Authority that put it out. We were one of the only applicants that took the project to heart and said, we will try to make it work. In discussions, it was borne out that the value of the land was about $60,000. And that value, you know, if it were a single family home, that would be a less use of the land. If we could put 10 or 12 units on it, that would increase the density, that would get more value out of that land. That's what we proposed. So this is on the outskirts of town. It's not within the township, or excuse me, within the village. It is in the township, but we felt that after the history that Habitat had in Sutton's Bay, we would get a major pushback. So we thought this property had potential. It is a little bit of a difficult property, but as we went through the process, it kept checking the boxes. It kept getting approvals, and I'll show you that as we go. Here's the parcel right here. You'll see it's about 2.6 acres, and down at the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see a triangle coming off of Merrick Road. Without that easement, this property would not be developable with affordable housing or multifamily housing, because there is not 285, there's only 285 feet of frontage on Merrick Road. We have to exceed 300 feet for the zoning to allow for multifamily housing on that parcel. Lo and behold, that easement to access this parcel gave us that 300 feet. So right off the bat, we were able to get that checked off the list. Here's our site plan. It has a long driveway traversing up to the view area or the open flat area. It's situated with 8 units total. There are 6 2-bedroom units, and then we added on the ends a 3rd bedroom on the end units, so that we have 2 3-bedroom units, and that would be on the ground floor. So if somebody was handicapped or they had a bigger family, they would have a 3rd bedroom with a full bath attached to it. There is room for septic system. It perked, so we got that approved. The plan was put together by Mansfield. I think they do a great job in design and tucking it in within the setbacks, and it would probably be elevated and unseen by most of the people traversing Merrick Road. So, excuse me, let me get some water. So to put the project together, we had to map out what our total costs were, and this has sort of developed and increased over time. But out of the 1.7 million for the total development costs, 70% of that has to be granted capital. We can only support 30% in permanent debt. It's sort of the reverse. When you go to buy a house, you put 10, 20% down, you get 80% financing. That you turn upside down. When we go, we have to get 70 or 80% down and 20 or 30% financing. It's a tough hill to climb, but that's how you map it out, and that's how you make affordable housing. So we got some donations. We actually got capital put towards this project. It shows community buy-in. I don't have to fill the room with people promoting affordable housing. I can prove it right here that we've raised $417,000. So people say, why don't you do a LIHTC? And LIHTC, low-income housing tax credit, that's a whole new spectrum that you can go to the state and get monies granted to the project in equity. But you'll notice on the left-hand side is the conventional financing that we're pursuing for this project. On the right-hand side is the LIHTC. But the developer fee on the LIHTC side, up on the upper right-hand corner, is $325,000. They're allowing us to take that much money. We need that money if we're going to go LIHTC, because it's a lot more cumbersome process, but they do give you a lot more money. Notice also on this LIHTC comparison, the cost per unit. On the LIHTC side, it's $262,000. On the left-hand side for our conventional, it's $217,000. Big savings, makes a lot more sense. It takes less time and less hurdles to go through. I just wanted to point this out that, you know, we could go the LIHTC route, but it would be a lot more expensive. And frankly, on an 8 or 10 unit, it's not feasible. Okay, so on our total development cost, we're showing the $410,000 permanent financing. We have an approval from Independent Bank for that amount. Mishtamad is committed to $200,000 pending the final bit of capital that we have to raise. And then $400,000 was granted by the Affordable Housing Grant Program through Federal Home Loan Bank. With that was a guaranteed 15-year commitment from them that goes away after 15 years. It is not a interest loan, it is simply a grant. And then I mentioned earlier, the 411,000, that is banked capital to date in the bank, or at least most of it is. There's 100,000 in investment agreement, which we can consider as banked money anyway. So 272,000, that's our outstanding fundraising needed right now. I think last time I proposed to you, it was 278,000. So it's come down a little bit since then. But about 3 weeks or 4 weeks of time, we got some more money trickling in. And there's our equity from home stretch of 42,500. Total development cost and cost per unit of 217,000. So we've got our map. We know where we're going to go with this and where are we going to use the money. Here's a breakdown of all the uses of the funds. And I thought it was important that you saw, how much goes to each component. I don't have to go through the list. I could probably speed this up a little bit, but notice also the developer fee. We could allowable, and most developers would want 243,000 in developer fee. That's just going to have to, raise more money, cause more of us to explain why are we going to make 300,000. I thought 100,000 is a mark. If we can make that, we'll cover our costs and we'll get to do the construction, of which we do get profit and overhead as well. So by using homestretch, you get both developer fee and the construction income. Okay. So far, the site is ready to go, and we have approved zoning as of July 5th. We have the approved pilot, the 6% pilot, the payment in lieu of tax that was approved on July 14th of 21. Notice how far back those go. And the approved well and septic on July 13th. So you can see over the course of a year and a half, 2 years, we've developed the site. We don't really have the site transferred 100%. It is sitting in escrow waiting to be completely committed to homestretch. The deed has been transferred, but it can be grabbed back by the land bank if we don't raise this last 273,000. So that's pretty important. But the point is we have a shovel-ready project, and I've demonstrated that with the entitlements. When we construct, it's my desire to use panelized construction. It's been my passion for 20 years ago. I used to build with panels. I got out of it into stick framing for more of a custom home application, but coming back to panelization makes sense today more than ever. It's super insulated. It saves on labor costs. Labor is hard to find these days. So panelizing really is the go-to if you're going to be building affordable housing. And I know Mishta is promoting that, and a lot of other general contractors are going to that because they can't get the crews to build the homes or the structures that they need. I am struggling a little bit on some of our projects with labor, but we're working through that. And we've got good contacts over the years. So that's my go-to. These are structural insulated panels. They're provided by a company in Holland, Michigan, Porter Panels. They've been around for quite a while. They're one of the first few manufacturers. I've used them in the past. They're good, square, solid panels, and they do put together a good package. So here's a snapshot of the panelization process. You see the blue line around the perimeter. That's the shell that Porter Panels sells us that we erect on site. All the other interior walls are site framed. There's the second floor. You can see 2 bedrooms on either side of 1 bathroom upstairs. The lower bath or the lower area does have a half bath. So this could be visitable. If you had somebody in a wheelchair, they could use the facility on the lower level. There's the exterior of the shell. This is the package from Porter Panels. Now, when we talk about the Vineyard View, there is no natural gas or the ability to bring on propane would be, somewhat cumbersome. So we're promoting this as a carbon neutral project, and the insulated panels are going to help in that regard. So we'll use either a heat pump or an air-to-air exchange pump. We are 100% electric. Cherryland Electric will provide the electricity. We have a private well and septic, which actually is going to be a cost savings to the tenants. They won't have to pay city sewer and water, which runs around $110, $120 a month in a lot of locations. So we're going to take that on. We're going to have a reserve set aside so that we can maintain that facility as time goes on. We're going to throw in rooftop solar array if we can get funding for that. And there's our group that is working to get us to that point. Energy recovery ventilation is an emphasis to keep indoor air quality as fresh and as healthy as possible. So that's kind of a unique thing about the project. I think that does have a lot of excitement for people in that we won't have to have multiple sets of utilities. So here's the panels coming on a semi, pretty easily assembled on the site, but that's how they come, wrapped and ready to go. And here's a few shots of them on the honor site. And there's some of the wall sections going up. You'll see the center wall there with the studs. That's our firewall. Those actually are panelized and brought to the site as well. Then we have additional, you can see the panels in the foreground. And there's the honor site with the panels erected. It's basically a nice big tight box, and it gives people a 2-bedroom townhouse with their own individual unit. No one living above them, no one below them. There's a rendition of what the Vineyard View apartments would look like upon completion. You can see the repetition here. This is something that I want to put in every municipality. We go to Antrim, we go to Benzie, Kalkaska, wherever they want to have one of these structures, we have a method and a way to do it. That's what it's going to look like. So repetition is smart, and Porter Panels said that they could scale up and produce several of these, which they would like to, but they like our plan, they like our concept. Lastly, we use seeds. The plan is to help people get into the industry as much as possible, get the youth involved, get them into construction or landscaping or whatever they can do. So if we get them involved in the project, we're actually helping the next generation, we're helping other builders, we're helping ourselves. And a lot of the funding that we get from them comes from 2% funding through the tribe. That would be something that I might approach you with later on to help fund this effort. So it's kind of a complete package, if you ask me. I think that's the end of it. There's my card if you want to contact me, but basically we are asking for as much of the ARPA funds as possible. The sooner we can get that balance of 273,000, we can pull permits. We can get this thing going. So please consider that.
Nice presentation, John, and thank you for all that you're doing and trying to particularly address the homeless population and their housing needs. What the back, a couple of questions. The back of the yard, is there a little back space? There was a picture of that.
Yeah, each unit does have a patio, and there was a, on the floor plan, I think you can see.
I could see.
Yeah, up at the top, you see where it says patio, patio, patio.
Unfortunately, it's me. I feel
So tight.
my glasses.
Right. So up here in the back.
Okay.
So there's full-size washer and dryer right here, the kitchen, and then a back door. And each one has a 12 by, I think it's 12 by 16 or 12 by 20 patio at the back, and it's their concrete patio. So, and that would be all wooded towards the back. Sometimes it depends on where some of the mechanical equipment goes, but we can put screening between both. And then on this particular site, we wouldn't allow for barbecues out the back because it's too close to the building. 15 feet is the distance we have for insurance purposes. So we'll probably have a community barbecue.
Okay.
But yeah, there's private patios.
I was just thinking we use it for animals.
Yep.
The other question I had is, I think the housing choice voucher, that's a HUD program, isn't it?
It is
How
funded.
does it?
Excuse me, John, could you stop sharing the screen so people that are watching this can view the dialogue? Thank you.
Word? Oh, good.
How does that, I thought you said it is 110, is that a fair market value?
Yep, 110% of fair market rents.
Wow.
So, yeah, and we go by charts that'll say we can only rent to 60 or 80% or 30% of the area median income per, that's per unit. We have charts that show what the bedroom rent would be, what the income should be. But I'll give you an example. On our 8th Street project, we have rents at about $750 per month. And one of the gentlemen has a housing choice voucher, and it pays upwards of, I think
he pays around 200, doesn't he?
yeah, 698. But the voucher actually pays 110% rent. So we actually get like, I think it's 1,100 a month for that unit. So we want those because it'll help us in our bottom line, keep the organization open, but a lot of people don't want them. the housing choice voucher is prevalent almost everywhere in every community, but it's not used because there's no housing for them to be placed. Now, if I went and got a project-based voucher, which is also through HUD, that attaches a unit with a project-based voucher. So if somebody comes to me without a voucher, without a housing choice voucher, but they have maybe $1,000 a month income, they can't afford the unit. The voucher will pay us the rent for their unit, and they will pay 30% of the rent to Homestretch. So it's a win for everybody, but Traverse City Housing Commission, I think they have 150 housing choice vouchers available and out there with people looking for housing. And we get calls from them every day. I've got a voucher. Do you have a place we could rent? No, we don't. We'd love to. There isn't enough housing. So they're revolving. They're going housing voucher to another person. They look for 3 months. They can't find it. They pull the voucher. They give it to somebody else. And they got another 3 months. And it just it's disheartening, really. And a lot of veterans have those vouchers and they can't use them. I got a call this morning from a veteran that is at the Goodwill Inn and he hasn't a place to live. He has a housing choice voucher. But hang in there. We could maybe have something ready for you in I think I said 1.5 to 2 years on Carver Street. We're going to have a project for him. And he says, I don't know if I can hang in there that long. And he called one place and said they had a 3-year waiting list. And he says, I don't know if I'll be around in 3 years. But I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions for you. Homestretch, is this a nonprofit organization?
This is. Yes.
Okay. And I believe you said you have a 12-member board. Okay.
Correct.
And are your wages paid through them
Mhm.
as your assistant? Okay. So these homes are all rented, or I'm sorry, these units are all rented. So I assume that Homestretch is responsible for maintenance and upkeep, septic pumping, well issues, snow plowing, lawn care, all of the above.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
That's all I have right now.
Well, I can opine on the 12-member board. We are approved by MISTA, the state of Michigan approves us as a community housing development organization, which allows us for additional funding from the state. But that board makeup has to consist of at least, I think it's 20% of the board from the low-income community, or preferably our tenants. So they sit on the board with us.
Are your board members paid?
They are not, they're all volunteer.
Volunteers.
Correct. And our budget is about 170,000 per year. I make 90,000. She makes 40,000 and she makes 20,000.
Well, it looks to me as though your organization goes out and looks for funding to put these projects in place. Correct me if I'm wrong, then your agency collects the rent, takes care of the maintenance, and then you put money back in the pot for other programs once your overhead employees are paid.
That's correct.
Okay. And it's almost like a private business in a sense.
Well, I use a business model to keep it open. And
Right.
we're unique in the sense that we're actually not just a developer, but a general contractor. So my 20 years of being a general contractor, my license is transferred to Homestretch so that we can be the general contractor. We're not relying on somebody else to make profit on our project.
So why is it that contractors in the community cannot compete with what you're doing?
No, they're going to make 20%, 15 to 20% profit and overhead. Fair enough, and they should. And if they can
They
make
have
more,
employees to pay, I would assume.
well, you bet.
Correct.
So if we can take a developer fee, a reduced developer fee, and we can take a reduced general contracting fee, we actually are still at the level of being able to sustain ourselves.
But
We
I
just
think
reduce
one of
it.
the things that you're missing is not only is your funding coming from taxpayer dollars, but then for however long these citizens remain in these homes, the community is still paying for that.
You know, they're self-sustaining. I mean, the initial equity that's put in from the taxpayer, if you will, that works for the next 30, 40, 50, I'll say 100 years. If you want to put in money for a bridge that lasts 100 years, I'll put in a project of townhomes that'll last 100 years. It's the same concept. The community is benefiting, but that money is working for more people or more families, I think, than it would have had it were put to some other use. But those funds are available regardless. I mean, it's not as though we're actually, they're being granted to us willingly. And I have three sources: the Federal Home Loan Bank, the state, and any other local organizations that will donate to us. So it is private money too.
That was my next question. In the areas that you're building, what support are you getting from the local township in dollars from their ARPA funds? Any?
None so far from the townships specifically. And the support, I would say the monetary support will be over the period of the life of the project. So if there's a pilot put in place, which this has, that payment in lieu of tax might, otherwise, if this were market rate, maybe the tax burden would be 10,000 a year as opposed to 4,000 a year. So there's a 6,000 a year, you know, tax rebate that could have gone to the community had somebody done a market rate unit and did an ad valorem tax base.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So what you're saying is by developing these in these townships will be able to capture the value of that property in their local district.
Yeah, we do pay against that. And we do give, if they give us a pilot, it's written in our language for that pilot agreement or ordinance, if you will, that we will give preference to the residents of that township when we select our tenants. So we're not trying to house somebody from out of the area into your project that you've given some taxpayer consideration to.
I'm curious why you haven't gone to the townships for this that you're building it.
Well, I have. The Suttons Bay Township has granted the pilot. It's an approved pilot. If they have ARP funds, I will ask them for that. There hasn't been any notices on that level yet that I've seen, but if it's available, we'll be first in line, I guarantee you, and probably third or fourth in line from all their other needs that they have coming up on their funding.
I apologize, I missed it earlier. How many units is on Merrick Road?
8 units.
Okay, so there's 18. How does it work? Is residents from Leelanau County going to get first preference
Yes, they are.
over somebody from out of county?
Yes, they are.
So that they'll get filled by our residents first.
They will, you know, we have to be careful with fair housing laws.
Yeah.
So I can't say I will fill them and you can't demand that I fill them, but we can say that we will both give preference to applicants coming from that county. And that's the only way to do it without getting into trouble with the fair housing laws. And I can tell you right now, we have one at Bay Oaks. I think her name is Morgan. She actually is commuting from here to Traverse City to live in one of our units. And if this were to come to fruition, she would move back to the county into one of these units. And we haven't released the applicant process yet. It's too premature. I don't even have the funding in place, but as soon as we make a call for applicants, we'll be flooded with applicants and they will be stamped with the date that they come in to give priority as far as first in, first served.
Yeah, I realize you have requirements. I just don't really want to see us give a lot of money and then let's fill it up from Benzie and Grand Traverse and our own people are still looking for housing.
Yeah, well, you're in a unique position. I'm a Leelanau County resident and taxpayer too, and I would want people from Leelanau County. I want to promote Leelanau County. I want people that work here to live in these units, and that would help my community. I'm on the Township Zoning Board of Appeals. I'm on the Board of Review. Leland Township is, you know, that's my neighborhood. So in that sense, you have a developer that's unique, and I would run with it if you can.
Thanks.
Yep.
Commissioner Wong.
Yes, thank you. The problem is that you say you would give preference to, but you can't control that. So if you have families from other areas that have either, what are the qualifications, like a little less income, a one more child, et cetera, then you do have to give the housing to those people from outside, correct?
I have discretion. I mean, these are our projects. These are our communities that we're serving when we go into them. I can deny a tenant based on what my tenant selection criteria is. I have a written criteria, and if maybe I screen them for a credit report or screen them for maybe the commute for them is going to be too much anyway, that it wouldn't make it feasible for them. And I would explain that, you're not the right candidate for this, or I could just simply deny them and they wouldn't be the wiser. We have discretion. We are the owners. So fair housing laws is something that we're always conscious of, but we would deny something if it didn't make sense and if it was detrimental to the project too. I mean, I have a whole myriad of ways to deny somebody.
So how many families do you have waiting in this county right now for these houses?
In this county, you know that statistic? I wouldn't say we'd have a whole list of people because there is no project that we're building in Leelanau County that we are asking applicants to apply for. And that's the part.
We have, our location we're working on right now is in Honor, and we have, I think, 4 or 5 applicants right from that area that will, they'll go ahead of somebody that might not be from the area. So, but that's because the Honor place is already being built and this isn't in the works yet. I think we have 2 or 3 from Leelanau, if I'm guessing.
Well, we have the one
Fantastic.
Morgan that lives on the Bay Oaks, and she's from the area. I guarantee you, if we were to open it up, we would be inundated with applicants, and that could be cumbersome and it could really bog us down. What are we going to do? Send out letters to everybody says, well, we can't get the funding and there is no housing available. So, I mean, you draw a fine line. Even in Honor, by getting applications right now is a little premature. I mean, we're in the rough framing stages. We're supposed to start MEPs next week. We're maybe 60% done. We really should get to 80% and then close to knowing a date for occupancy where we can say now we can take applications. It just makes logistic sense for us to hold off on getting applicants until we know we have a project in the ground.
Any other questions?
Yes,
Go ahead, Mr. Wessel.
yes, thank you. And thank you, John, for coming. I did ask our administrator to put this on the agenda today because we've struggled for a long time on how we address Alice and how we address housing. And I believe that this is a unique project. It's a central location in our county. It addresses most housing developments are buyer occupied, and this is a rental place for multi-family housing. John's already demonstrated that we have lots of private funds in it, lots of nonprofit funds in it. The land banks have been a part of it. Leelanau Christian Neighbors has been a part of it. Mishta has been a part of it. So it would be a way to partner, I think, to solve some housing needs. And I'm well aware of homestretch capability for managing. When Leelanau Reach dissolved, we dissolved in part because we knew that homestretch could do it better and they had more capacity than Reach. And the last thing I'd say about the project is one of the things I like about the model is if we can get this funded, the business model then creates more capital to fund another project in Leelanau County. So I thank John for coming, and I hope we can find some more funds because I think this would be worthy of further consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So, then with the funding discussion on this, be at our next meeting, our executive.
I mean, this is a
Yes,
special meeting.
next on the agenda.
Yeah, right. It's right here is potential funding
Oh, so can we
recommendations.
jump to that portion then?
Well, if we're through, yes.
No, I think it's great that you're looking at 18 units, but have you looked, can you even expand maybe down the road at that location?
We've maxed out the sewer and the water capacity. Yeah. It'd be my goal that, and I'm looking at a property in Lake Leelanau, in the village of Lake Leelanau, where they're going to extend the sewer line to accommodate one of our projects. And I'd say I'm getting calls for people in Northport. We put maybe a 10 or 12 unit in Northport. I know Empire's been crying for these. I'd put the same model, Northport, Empire, anywhere in the county or any township that says we can accommodate your building with the land and the zoning, we would put it there. So this is the beginning of something coming down the road. And I know there'll be additional funding, but it takes an awful lot of time to get the grants out there, to submit, get on the grant cycles, everything else. That's why it's 2 years in the making to get where we are today. And every month that goes by that we don't fill that 273, it just pushes us back further. And at some point, then we get into winter, then we're waiting a whole nother season to wait in the spring. And it really has to happen now. And that'd be my last pitch, I guess.
Assuming that you had, I've been asked this before, assuming you had the dollars and you're ready to go.
Yep.
What is the total build time? You said you're using the panels.
Yeah, it's still 12 months.
Okay.
Before panels, it was 12 to 14 months. With the panels and the crews that I've got lined up, 12 months is about right. Yeah.
The other thing I saw, PBS, but they're doing form, but instead of paneling wood, it's cement. Have you seen this, and is this feasible for this area?
It could be. Cement has a lot of downsides environmentally. What I'm more promoting, and we're looking at even for a site in Traverse City right now, is a mass timber structure or cross laminated solid panel construction. It meets fire code. It's renewable. It uses Michigan resources. That to me over concrete and for insulating purposes, et cetera, makes a lot more sense. But I'm with you on, some hybrid of a manufactured masonry foundation or ICFs, insulated concrete foundations. Those are great too.
When I saw it, I thought insulation wise, concrete just is cold.
Yeah, and that's why you have to treat it with the ICF, and it's doable, it's done, but you sort of gravitate towards as much as what the local labor force can handle. And even the supply houses, you go to them and say, well, we don't have, a wholesaler here. And if we're going to do it, we have to order so many hundreds of thousands of product, and the logistics, you got to stick with what they're capable of locally. And I think the panels, it's a home run, plus the CLTs that we're going to be promoting.
That makes sense.
I don't think we've talked about the elephant in the room here, and that's this inflation that we see out there. You came here today with a specific dollar amount for this project, but I think it would be reasonable to consider, with the trajectory that we're looking at realistically, that this price could be a lot higher than what you're presenting to us today. And if that's the case, how does that impact the project going forward?
Good question. And that's why my numbers have gone beyond 200,000 per unit in the course of a year and a half. I'm at 217, year and a half, I was at 202.
What is it per square foot right now?
Oh, I wouldn't be able to answer that, but
Somewhere I read it was like
$238
a square foot.
Yeah. In these examples, we're not just talking about the actual hard cost construction. We're also talking about set asides for reserves and replacement, operational reserves, and those have some returns, but not much. So there's a whole other myriad of costs that go into it that I would be hard pressed to say the exact square footage, but I could calculate it. We could show it. To your question about increased costs, banks and even Homestretch is still on our pro formas with the state. We have to have at least 10% of our hard costs set aside in reserve or in a contingency account. So by $1.3 million hard construction cost, I have $130,000 contingency line item that I can draw from. And that is being dictated by the banks. 2 years ago, it was 5%. Now it's 10%. So they know it, we know it, we're trying to protect ourselves. We set them up to see if they can fail. And so far, we've been ahead of the curve. And I know that in honor, we have used up 70% of our contingency and we're 65% through with the project. That's eating into it pretty fast, but that was set up a year ago.
I'm going to say right out of the box here today, the board is looking at a very large broadband project. We're looking at towers. And I think there is a consensus on the board for those two items. However, the board, I believe, committed 3.2 or 3.4, I think it was 3.2 towards broadband, but the board has yet to determine where that, what is it, 1.8 remaining or 1.4?
1.8.
1.8 remaining debt. So before I make any decisions about spending any more ARPA dollars, we need to have the conversation about where the dollars are coming for the project that they expect us to sign a contract for. And I believe that's today on the agenda. So for me, everything else is off the board. I believe I have asked more than once to have a financial discussion on this issue before we make that decision. I do know that the finance team met. I did not hear any conversation about that particular.
It'll be on March 23rd, the next meeting.
Okay,
And that's on the agenda.
okay, good. Glad to hear that, because otherwise we need to have our treasurer in here and our finance department in here having this discussion. So thank you so much for your time. I wish in the private sector I had a business model like yours where I could take in taxpayer dollars.
Well,
Doesn't work for that.
no, but we're not here to make a profit. We're here to serve the people. And I think that's what our goal has always been, to help the communities and not, we're not, you know.
I commend your work. However, in my opinion, you already get a big chunk of the taxpayers' dollars.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to say that I truly, I do appreciate that everything that you do in all the areas that you do. And I like your model of your, whatever grant dollars you're successful in getting, whatever donations, whatever corporate you're able to get on, and I appreciate that. But I think we have to be very careful of how many county dollars to put into something like this. So as I said from the beginning, I was not going to support us getting into affordable housing with these ARPA dollars, because I think we have got some major projects already committed and already online. My main concern, I guess, right now is, as you proceed forward, is that this might not be the time to be building what you might consider affordable housing, because unfortunately it's not time to be building any housing, and you're going to put so much into these houses, and they're almost going to be underwater before you begin, because these prices aren't going to come down anytime soon, and I think they're going to be out of reach, and that's a great concern that's a huge concern I've got. I mean, if you had the supplies sitting on site, you know, and it were just labor you were looking at, that would be a different story. But even the supply line chains are really stressed right now. And I had an interesting concept over the weekend, because we're all petitioned by people for what our people and residents in this county want. And in thinking about all the calls we've received, they've been for fiber. And this is why we made the commitment to fiber. And this is what we are hearing. This is what's coming into our ears, is fiber, broadband, internet, towers. So what we haven't been hearing is people screaming for affordable housing. But there is the older envelopes that are sitting out there And we all drive by them and we all wonder why there's nobody in them. And if you stop and talk to like the landowners, quite often these older homes need a little pickup and then they could be rentable. That's really where I would rather see this go, along the line of what we do with the CDBG. And if you were to take some of these older homes and invest into them, 30, 40,000, sometimes they just need new windows, sometimes they just need insulation, whatever. And do the model they do with the accessory dwelling units where, you know, the renters then would have, for 10 years, the renters have to reach a criteria, the landowner gets half and the rest goes back into the investment company that does the work. And then after 10 years, then the landowner owns the house. And that would put some more of these houses that are already out there in our communities, just sitting there, that they just need that little boost. Landowner can't afford to fix them up, but there sits a house that could really be lived in. So I think that's just one concept that came to me over the weekend, and I thought it was a good one. And I just think we need to think even more outside the box right now. And I think this is a great project that you can make it work with your donated dollars or corporate sponsors. I think that's great.
You know, I think what you say about rehabbing some of the older homes is important, and there are programs that are doing that. The limitation, that's important. And in addition to that, the limitation is that's one family. And I think most of the people that you are interviewing could not afford those homes anyway. These are people working with very low incomes that need this kind of housing versus a whole home that they can't afford to keep and pay the taxes. So both programs are needed, and there is funding, and there are programs for what you're talking about. I was fortunate to be able to go to the conference in Washington. A couple of the sessions that I attended were one of the probably the most valuable was what other communities are doing about this, especially tourism resort based counties. This is a national problem, not just a Leelanau problem. And everyone who spoke, including the participants, their counties are working on this, and they're realizing they have to act. They can't just wait, because these families can't wait until inflation dies down in 10 years to have housing. They need housing now. Our businesses need employees now, and we want to be able to tell our constituents that their children can choose to live in Leelanau County and raise their children, that their children and grandchildren can go to the schools in Leelanau County where they went. Other counties are all acting on this and realizing they have to be proactive. There were several counties that have millages. The community realizes there is a need, and the community is paying a millage. All of them have housing coordinators, the ones that gave presentations. They have people on their staff who work on this full time. So it is not something we can just sit back and say, you know, this will take care of itself, and it's not our place. Actually, the function of a county government, of any government, is to do things for our people that individuals cannot afford themselves. But when we pool our money, we can do more for ourselves. And that's what this concept is. So our people have a need. Our elderly have a need. Our young families have a need. Our businesses have a need. It's been an identified need for a very, very long time. I do believe it is absolutely the function of us to allocate some of the funds that we have been given to help the people in our county have a roof over their And if people like this are willing to leverage multiple sources, if we tried to do this on our own, we would not be able to afford it. But we have an opportunity to be part of a plan that you have worked really hard on. And we could say, yes, we have taken first steps to help our people, to help our employers, to help make sure our families have a place to live and a roof over their heads. So I would strongly support. I don't think we can. And which township is it? Suttons Bay or Leland?
Suttons Bay Township.
I would hope that they would. I see they did get a chunk of money, and I'm sure they have a million uses for it. But if they could give you some of their portion as well, I would sure like to see this county as a first step. Put in, if we could put in 200,000, we are going to get more state money for our broadband, and we need more state money for our broadband. But I think we're well assured that we'll be getting it.
Can I add something to what you're saying?
Yes.
Just with the little bit of time I've had with this company, the little bit of research that I've been able to do, an article that John sent to me to read. One of the ways that this area is being affected is people 20s, 30s, maybe 40s are moving away because they can't afford to live here. So it's a vicious cycle, it continues and continues. Not only is this building 8 units, it's 8 units year after year after year after year. It's not just 8 families that benefit from this. It will keep people with lower income here and working in the places that you might go to eat, working in the businesses that you need people to work in. That's all.
Yes.
I hope that you consider that.
And I think it's our job as county government to be proactive on this. Our individual families cannot do this, but we can. And I propose that we do.
Seeing no motion.
I will make a motion then.
Please.
I would move that we recommend is this a recommendation or?
No, this is a special
This is it.
meeting, so.
Okay.
then
I don't have
whatever
to
we
use
pass-
recommend today.
Correct.
I would move that we approve 150,000 for this homestretch project to help the people. I'll second.
Any other comments? My only concern is that we don't know exactly what the towers are going to be. We're not really sure about additions. So when I had gone through the math, I couldn't support over 125,000. So, and I will not support it at 150.
Is that an amendment?
No, well, I would amend it. I would make an amendment to 125,000.
I'll second.
Yeah.
Any other comments? So let's just have a roll call vote on this. The first one would be on the amendment.
On your
Yes.
So just to clarify, it's to lower the amount.
It would lower to 125,000. That's what the amendment.
Chairman Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Lautner,
No.
I'm sorry,
No.
Commissioner Robbins,
Yes.
Commissioner Rushton,
No.
Commissioner Solislow,
Yes.
Commissioner Alguier,
Yes.
4-2, motion passes.
Motion passes 4-2. So then I will now do it as an amended motion. This is the motion now for 125,000.
Commissioner Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Lautner,
No.
Commissioner Robbins,
Yes.
Commissioner Rushton,
No,
Commissioner Sudas Little. Yes. Commissioner Alguier,
Yes.
4-2.
So the motion passes. We have their law.
Wonderful, and that's,
Thank
All
you.
right.
And
Thank
may we be able to, and thank you. I'm glad we will be able to tell the people of our county that we support them and their ability to live here and our businesses and their ability to hire.
I think when we move on to number 2 here, which is professional services contract with DCS.
You want to talk about any other funding requests from anybody else? On B, potential.
I thought we do the others.
Oh, okay, okay,
Yeah.
all right,
You know, I don't
Okay.
want to do it.
okay, so I'm not sure we're on the same page, so
Yeah.
this
Well,
is,
so are you talking about Housing North
no, I'm not.
asking? Okay. Is,
No, well, I mean, we have on the agenda here, the professional, where it says potential funding recommendations, I thought that was specifically for home stretch.
It could be for any,
But it could be for anything, but
Yeah,
basically.
maybe you
it was
should-
under AB.
yeah, maybe I suggest you talk about this contract and the tower costs and then talk about any other funding request.
Right.
So does
I
that
was
make
just gonna
sense?
go through this,
Yeah,
yeah,
does that make sense?
it does.
Okay, okay. So I'm following up on a discussion we had last month, and I have a chip too, so I apologize for talking with silent mouth. It's on the lower right hand. And every time my tongue hits it, I kind of quince a little bit, so I make a face. It's not that I'm making faces in interview, just my mouth's a little sore. So I'm following up a discussion we had last month. Last month, the board voted 7-0 to authorize me to enter into contract. The discussion with DCS Technology for design to be our owner representative for the broadband project. At that meeting, I stated that his fees were 5%. I was actually wrong. They're 3.2%. I based it 5% on the 3.2 million that we allotted. But the total project is $5 million. So if you take his fee of 160,000 over 5 million, which is the total cost of the project, is 3.2%. And so what I did is I entered in a dialogue with DSC Technology and also our legal counsel, and in your package, you have a proposed contract based on what was proposed at our last meeting. So the fees are the same and just in a legal contract, which is to be more happy with this afternoon.
I would move. Just getting the actual. Maybe not.
I would move that we approve the professional services contract between DCS Technology Design LLC and the county for the amount of $160,000,
Not to exceed.
not to exceed $160,000. Funds to come from ARPA dollars until other sources identified.
Would that be out of the 3.2 million?
No, I thought that originally, but Melinda, Commissioner Lautner correctly said that, you know, we needed the 3.2, so that would be out of the remaining funds that would remain, or we could take a look at the DTR fund as well. Second.
Any other comments? Yes, Commissioner Wood.
here we are, making decisions incrementally about spending dollars without even having finance before us to tell us what our situation is. I can't vote for this way. With that said, in going through their contract, there's a couple corrections in there that need to be made. Unfortunately, I thought we would have a paper copy here at our desk, and we don't, so I was looking. One I can tell you is, that's page 2 of 7. But you've got the copy, so.
You want it?
Yeah. you send this to us?
Thursday or Friday, I can't remember when back was. Thursday afternoon, I believe.
Probably a different page over here, so.
Right.
Yeah, but sometimes if they're sent, you know.
It'll scan in, so the
Nine,
numbers.
yeah.
It's number 9 on the board packet. It's 2 to 7.
Page.
Well, what was emailed to you?
They're two different page numbers, is what I'm saying.
There was the final, I'm going to paraphrase because I can't seem to find it at this moment, but at the end of the project, the contract talks about providing the administrator with the final report. However, it did not specifically say that the Board of Commissioners would receive a final report for the project. And I thought I had a problem with that. The final report for the project should come before the county board.
Well, you always pass motions pending final legal review. We can make that change easily.
Well, not if we don't point it out, if we get missed. It's under number 1, 2 of 7. Which shall be presented to the county administrator, who may require the project manager also prevent the final report to the county board of commissioners. I think that we should eliminate that last sentence and include the board of commissioners for a final report.
We can easily do that.
Right, that was 1. Actually, I think in further reading the contract, I've cleared up my second question.
And I think that it would mandate that the manager come personally and present. to the board.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is why it's that way.
Going back to my original comment is I will not support this today for that reason. I was assuming these dollars would come out of the ARPA 3.2, but hearing that today that they're not, that's an additional funding request without hearing anything at all from our treasurer or our finance department. And quite frankly, I think that's irresponsible of this board to move forward without it.
Yes. I would just like to say that I have already appreciated Mr. Scher's being available. And I sure see why it's important to have him with someone with that much knowledge, both of our county and our county needs, and of the scope of the project and how to do it. I was in on a call with him last Thursday. He was it Thursday or Tuesday? It's all a blur.
Thursday.
His depth of knowledge of the needs of his county and what needs to happen is invaluable. I've also been able to email him because, as you all know, my 3 townships are not part of this project for the most part. So he has been invaluable already. And I have lots and lots of questions from my folks, and he's already invaluable in helping me with all of the things that will happen, need to happen, and how they need to happen. So I sure appreciate his involvement.
I don't disagree with the selection. I don't disagree with anything in that regards. I don't disagree that, he may be the best person for it. What I'm saying is we haven't done our homework. And our first obligation is to the citizens that we serve. It's our responsibility to explain to our citizens how we handle our finances. And we're failing.
Mr. Long.
Yeah, we did pass a motion that we have
Mr. Scherer, head up this project for us. And I think it's a reasonable price for the service he's going to provide. I did take a couple of phone calls where people thought that we really should have put it out for bid, and we didn't, and we haven't asked. Did we set aside our bid policy when we passed this motion? Yes, we did. Okay, we have done that. And that was a biggest disappointment. I think that we should, though, we really need to say where these dollars are going to come from. We should have our finance person make that recommendation to us. I really don't want to slow this process down. I don't know what another couple of weeks would do to the project. I don't know if we can afford to do that. We're going to be meeting again in about a week.
We don't have a next meeting date.
No, I'm talking about executive.
Oh.
We could do this at executive in 1 week. If we wanted to wait and find out where these dollars are going to come from. We really should be hearing from our finance. I do agree with that.
It wouldn't be just 1 week though, you're talking, it would be then to approve it the following. So I'm just looking at getting started, getting permits. I know how the companies work. If we can get started with a contract, it's gonna take some time. They can't begin permitting or anything until we're through. And I think we've got a great opportunity. I'm not opposed to taking it out of the 3.2 and adding that to the additional monies that we need to fund. So we've already said we're going to commit 3.2. So let's take it out of there, and then we'll just add on the amount that needs to be identified for our sources. I'm comfortable with that. I don't have any. I am fully confident we're going to get more funds in the ARPA.
Is that the change in your motion then?
Yes.
Is that okay with the second?
Yes.
Commissioner Rush.
Well, then we go back to the 1.8 million, which increases that dollar amount. Where's that money coming from? And if I recall, I had asked a couple weeks ago for us to consider that before we approve the project. It should have been on the agenda today. We should have had those people before us today to have the conversation, not next week or next month. Thank you.
Let me just
So
address-
we're putting the cart before the horse. We also have special meetings we can call if there's such an urgency.
We did have a finance meeting scheduled before that. Unfortunately, one member was ill and we didn't want to move forward without the full membership there. So we met, but we chose to hold off until we had all three members there. It's Commissioner Robbins, Commissioner Wessel, and Commissioner Lauter. Unfortunately, Commissioner Lauter had a health issue that day, spur of the moment, couldn't be there. So we were prepared to meet. Commissioner Wessel's gone. So next time we could actually meet was March 23rd. But we do have a plan in place. Just in terms of where the rest of the money coming, I mean, that's a big question. But I met with our state rep Friday morning. Everyone is telling me the money's there. I mean, the money is in the state. It's all federal money. It's not state money. It's at least 5.4 billion, as much as $8 billion. The state has to allocate it. Just remember how they will allocate it and the process. There may be up to 2 billion put into a rural broadband project. If that happens, everyone's telling us we should be first in line because we're one of the few counties that have a plan ready to go. If the state announced tomorrow that they have money for broadband projects, we could submit a proposal very, very quickly. So there's no guarantee we're gonna get money, but talking to our state rep, talking to our state senator, what we heard in Washington, what you hear from the MAC, the money's there. It's just a matter of how they're gonna allocate it. And everyone is saying broadband will be a priority. I was meeting with the director of the Council of Networks Northwest Friday, and he's saying the money will be there. They're preparing to help counties go through the process. No one knows exactly when the money will come or what the process will be, but it's not like the state has to find the money. The money's sitting there in an account, it's just a matter of allocating it to you voted up to 5 billion or I'm sorry, these numbers are overwhelming. You voted 3.2 and you have to raise 1.8. Now, if you add this, it'll be 1.996 there. You authorized me to enter in a contract with Point, but we really can't do that until we have a scope of work with Point, and that's why we need a consultant to help us with the scope of work. So that's a very complicated project, and as you know from past projects, a project manager really should pay for themselves if it's done right. So it's difficult to go forward with a contract with Point until we have a scope, a very detailed scope of work. None of us have the expertise to develop that scope of work. I don't want to say I don't trust Point, but we need that to come from us versus from them backwards. I think I'm sure they'd be glad to come up with a scope of work and work our legal counsel, but really should be vetted through the county's best interest versus their best interest. And so that's kind of one of the reasons I think we need this consultant on board. We did try to schedule a budget meeting for that purpose, and we did schedule it. Unfortunately, one of our members could not be there. And so I think we're trying to do the best we can under circumstances. It's a risk, yes. Either way you do it, no matter where you take the 3.2 and the 1 point and the 160,000, it still comes eventually from the same pot. We're gonna have to raise $1.9 million somewhere. Is the money gonna be there? The odds are very good. I can't tell you when, I can't tell you the process, but everyone's telling me, and you're hearing the same thing, the money's there. It's just a matter of how do we get it. And I'm being told we are leaps and bounds ahead of other counties. So if and when there is a process, now it could be just like last time. Last time I got an email announcing that we have 4.2 million. One option is they will match every county, every township dollar for dollar. There's enough money to do that. So that could happen. Or it could be a grant process for broadband, or it could be a grant process for any ARPA projects. But no one seems to have that vision in place on what will happen, because there's different viewpoints and ways how the money will be allocated.
Commissioner Rushton.
Thank you for all those what ifs,
Yeah.
or maybes, or we know it's coming. Bottom line is, we're looking at, if we add this on, we're looking at 1.96, almost $2 million. Where's that money coming from?
Part of having someone, well, having specifically DCS Technology Design do this is, as our administrator just said, they're very familiar with our county, with our needs. They put all that together. And I know from discussions with Chris that he feels strongly that he'll be able to lower the price. Number one, it won't be probably 5 million when he's done. But because he has a number of ideas on where they can start, what they can use, because we know what's available fiber-wise in our county right now, and what other options are actually there for them. They don't know that. So I think, his feeling is that he definitely will be able to drop down the overall price. We probably won't end up needing 5 million, but we do have 3.2 now. So let's take it out of the 3.2. If we don't do the scope of work, and if he doesn't start looking at this, we'll never know exactly what the bottom line is. But I think this is, an investment that gets us going towards an opportunity to really provide, as Commissioner Butler and others have said, what's really needed in this county, which is excellent broadband service. So that's.
I had a conversation with Representative O'Malley, and he actually said he is actively looking for additional funds for us because of we've got the project in place. So he confirmed what our administrator said.
Well, I'm glad to say that because he told me that privately too, but I don't want to say it publicly, but he is on our side working as our advocate at Lansing.
Right. Yes.
I'm wondering if our finance director and our treasurer are available at 3 o'clock to come in and speak to us on this issue.
I can see, sure.
Check and say.
Yeah, okay, I'll do it right there.
I wish we had done this kind of
earlier, like I asked.
when we decided that we could hire a finance director, a finance director and an HR director with no discussion nobody cared then, and that's
Oh, no.
200 to 250,000 a year for years.
Oh, no.
So I find this really interesting that
I asked weeks ago to have a finance.
no, that decision was made last May.
Mr.
We can
Chairman,
really
Please,
start.
she has
I-
the floor. Commissioner Elder has the floor.
is it on the
I got you
agenda?
on pause.
Are we just going to discuss just opening comment time?
No, I was
Or
making
are
a
we-
comment.
A comment
We
that has
have a
nothing
motion
to
on the
do.
floor right now,
We have a motion on the floor.
and we should really speak to that motion.
Are we going to set that motion aside and hear from finance, or are we?
We can have them talk about it while we have the motion.
Open discussion.
We can have discussion. We're in discussion right now. About the motion.
About the motion, okay.
I'm sorry.
So correct me, we started today at what, $1 million?
Yes,
Okay, we just spent 125, so we're down to 875, take another 160, then 750.
the one,
I know with her motion,
right.
yeah, but I'm just saying, that's what we would still have if.
I guess we don't, 160, oh yeah, if it passes, that rate
Right,
comes out.
yeah,
So it's still 3.2, not the 1 million.
right, if we didn't take it out of the 3.2, if we did, if it were to pass, we would be at 750.
Right.
Still available.
Well,
750 still available.
750 would be available.
So are you suggesting now that we change the motion to, instead of taking it out of the 3.2, take it out of the remaining dollars that are there? Is that what you're saying?
Not right now, I just want to hear from Glenn, I'm just throwing that out there,
Okay.
that's.
Jen was on her way. Mr. Gallagher's not here. Chairman, would like to make a 5-minute break. We've been for 2 hours.
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea.
That's what we have. Those
Yeah.
are good ideas.
Decisions.
Might as well just sit here.
Yeah. We've been for 2 hours, so they.
Yeah.
That was the middle of the motion, but okay. It's actually that policy to do in the middle of the motion. I guess not. How long of a break? 5, okay.
Thanks for coming so quickly.
Sure.
That's right.
Well, that's okay.
So, again,
This is cold.
oops, we don't have Jen.
Oh, that's
She was in
okay.
here.
She came in here.
Yes, we walked out. Yeah.
Matt's most senior 911 operator saved my granddaughter's life last Friday. No, she didn't. What happened? She was choking to death. So scary. Yeah. No, I don't even know what she had her do, but it worked.
Yeah, she talked her through the phone.
Yeah,
That's what I heard, yeah.
Oh, thank goodness.
yeah.
That had to be terrible.
There she is.
Yeah, 14.
Our operators here.
Jen, we're looking for your magic wand today.
Okay, not
Bring
sure
it along.
we have one.
At least some answers.
She left a wanted for you.
I think basically what we're looking for is how much discretionary funds do we have, like in the DTR?
Well, the DTR is handled by your treasurer.
That's in it.
No, I wasn't prepped. I was just told to show up to the table. So I have the general fund, but I don't have DTR. That would be something you'd want to discuss with John present.
All right.
On when you're looking at.
I was saying we do have a budget finance committee scheduled. Just want to check. You want to talk about the general fund since you're here?
I mean, I certainly can. So your general fund, unaudited, you had about 300,000 that came in under the revenues. So there's 300,000 there. I'm not sure, what are you looking to spend
1.96 million.
on top of the ARPA? Is that on top of the ARPA money?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I apologize for bringing here with not notice, but as you know, the board committed 5 million for the broadband project. And we allocated 3.2 from the ARPA. And we'll look at different options.
So $272,792 rolled forward from 21 to 22. Again, that's unaudited. But approximately 272,792 rolled forward.
272.
Yep, 272,792.
And so that's in, you said.
The general fund rollover. Mhm.
Oh, that's general fund roll.
Yep, so your revenues came in higher
Okay.
than expenses so far in 21. Yep, unaudited. I don't foresee that there'll be a big audited change. John will prepare the revenues, the deferred for the audit. So there may be some changes there. What he's collected, he has to put back and so forth.
What was the 300?
That's what I had first ballparked it, but it's 272,792 is what's currently on your 2021 unaudited rolled forward. So revenues coming in over expenditures.
Jen, you don't have an idea of what might be in DTR. We were talking about.
I mean, if you want to give me a minute, I can certainly go run some reports, but I apologize. I wasn't listening to your meeting at my desk.
We're working.
I was working, but that's okay.
We have,
Yep.
Go ahead.
no, we have some contingency. Do we have?
Your contingency for 2022 should be about, I think, 370, and then you added the 135 for the boat. So you put it up to about 4 something, I remember.
Okay, so but that's not cutting the boat. You said 300.
I think it's like 370 without the boat. It was the
But
same
that's-
number we carried over.
I mean, not that we would recommend spending that.
No, I would have you spend your fund balance forward before I had you spend your contingency.
Do you have an idea of what the fund balance is?
The fund balance that you had from right now as of December 31st is 7.7 million. Typically, the treasurer and I wouldn't want you to get under less than 50% before collection in July. So I'm not sure. I think in
April, I believe, is when Andrew will have your firm SEV numbers. So that'll tell you exactly what your revenue will be drafted coming in July, which I think will be, and it would be something relative to your decision making. Because if we see home sales going up and your SEV, your assessments are up, then your revenue coming in should be up as well, compared to what we budgeted.
No. Thank you. Okay, so what we committed the 3.2 to the broadband project, and we have all that
No, we have half and half will come in July, but it's guaranteed.
guaranteed, right? So we have.
So we have we got 4.2, we got 2.1 in the bank. The one is guaranteed to come in July.
All right, and, but even though, how many year project did we do with points? 2. It's a 2-year. And so we really have, because we're not going to, I mean, my guess is we're gonna write that contract in such a way, we're not going to give that all to them up front.
Yes,
So we've
yes.
got a
It'll
couple
be a
years then to come up with the
stage.
whole 3.2, 20% or something. All right, so that's something to consider. We got 2 years basically, but we have to come up with the other 1.8. We got a little bit of time there. But the question is, if we want to
It would
spend
be 1.96.
or 1.96, because we now have, this is where I was going, so 160,000 to hire the professional services contract.
And that would be staged payments also.
And that would be stage payments also. So how would, because this is a pop quiz for you today, so how would?
I hope I pass.
Yeah, me too. So how to come up with that? We've got the, so. You know,
So you've got 160K that you're paying a consultant,
Yes.
and then after that is when you
How
enter.
do we word our motion? So do we just plan on paying for that on top of the 3.2 when we still have to come up with 1.8, or should we just for now take it out of our 3.2 we've committed?
Well, we still have the excess.
Yeah, but we've got some other things too. Got our tower and.
I see. So, the pop quiz would be, I would suggest taking the $186 or $160,000 consultant fee from your general fund. And I wouldn't touch the ARPA funds.
At some point, if we were to get ARPA funds, we could transfer that money.
Yep, you just like we did in October, I had you make a motion to extend the broadband to include the additional surveys, I believe that was taken. So as long as we have a board motion, that's what the auditors are looking for. They're looking for a board motion that states that you can spend the federal dollars. Because as Chet knows, the biggest component of the 2022 is what you spend is anything over $750,000 is a single audit. And a single audit means the auditor comes on site and looks at every single bill and every single motion to make sure that your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed, that you've spent this federal money appropriately.
Okay.
And the nice thing is because we're under 10 million with the new laws, we really have flexibility. Our entire 4.2, or even if we double it, we'll still be under that 10 million threshold. So really, it's up to the board to decide how they want to allocate that money. But in terms of auditing and the proper accounting, it does give us much more flexibility.
So Jen, the motion before us deals with the contract,
Okay.
which is the 160,000. So as Commissioner Lawton was asking, wording, how do we word that so that it is clear? And I think I'm hearing you saying that it comes from the general fund.
Yeah, I think for right now, if you want to make that motion, I would put this in your special projects. I would do an amendment from your fund balance forward and do a special project. Then I will speak with the auditor, because if you're putting this money into a broadband, I'm not quite sure, without asking for help, if this is an actual capital purchase that the county's making and you own the equipment, which would be something that we would have to amortize. Otherwise, it would just be an expense.
No, we would not be going.
Right, if you're not owning it, then it would just be a service.
Yeah, even 3.2, we won't own it, right? I mean, even.
No,
even
no, we will
5%,
not be,
we won't own.
no.
So, all right, so but it's a 20-month project, correct? With
Oh,
first-
well, depending on when we sign the contract and when they start, yes.
So, but if we set it up as a single project, it would just.
Yep, so I would set this up as a special project and I would do a consultant. Your motion would read, to come from the Board of Commissioners budget and the funds to come from fund balance forward to the appropriate line item.
And Jen, anytime between now and December 31st, we could make a budget adjustment if there are extra ARPA funds coming.
Right now, I don't budget for your ARPA
No,
until
I'm
you make a
saying-
motion.
Yeah. but
That's
saying
correct.
If it passes at some point, if we get additional ARPA funds, you can help us with the wording to use it from ARPA.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So this is coming from the Board of Commission. fund?
Special project, yep, I believe it's gonna be 101, 100, 101, and I think it's 967,000.
101,
100, 101, 967.000. And instead of using contingency, I would use fund balance forward. That would be my recommendation.
I do. We can go back to the other motion. Go back to the first
Is
motion.
that okay?
Yes, yes. And Allison, do I need to repeat that?
Yes, please.
Can
Can I ask another question, Mr. Chairman?
Certainly.
There's all this talk about this new money coming in. If we go ahead and begin to spend these dollars on a broadband project, and the state comes out and allocates money specifically for broadband, will we be allowed to be more or less reimbursed?
That's a very good question. That's a question a lot of people are asking.
Right,
And the answer we're getting now, once again, it's not official.
Right.
They don't want counties like us who are going forward to be penalized. So we're being told that in the provisions, if and when, I can't guarantee
right.
it, but at least verbally, I'm being told there'll be a provision there to make whole the counties that have already allocated funds.
Even though we're using ARPA funds to begin with.
Yeah.
We can allocate it towards.
Now, that's the talk, because,
That's-
there's a couple other counties that are moving forward with projects, and their concern is just like ours. Are we gonna get penalized for being ahead of the game? And no one wants to do that.
Even when you do receive your funds from the state of Michigan, it's still a pass-through, it's still federal. So no matter how that comes in, it's still gonna go into we're gonna consider a federal dollar.
I want to thank you for coming in.
You're
on
welcome.
Such short notice. I think it was beneficial for all of us to have a clearer understanding of how, if we take on this task, we will be able to take care of our debts.
So you pass the test, Jim.
I passed the pop quiz.
With flying colors.
Commissioner Elder.
I would just like to add, we still have a whole lot. If we get more money for broadband, we need it for District 6.
That's not on the agenda, right?
Yeah,
I just need
we'll try to make this again well.
No worries
Well, we
about
got
getting more
correction
money,
on
what to do with it.
Okay. The motion was to approve the professional services contract between DCS Technology Design LLC and the county in the amount of up to $160,000, with funding to come from the Board of Commissioners Special Projects
Line item.
line item 100-101-967-000.
Support.
Pending final council,
Oh, pending
Yeah.
final approval,
legal counsel. review.
legal counsel.
And
review.
if you will, make sure that
Yeah,
that
we'll-
language
We
gets
could-
fixed.
Yes, that we can make a change ourselves.
Any other comments? Just have a roll call. vote.
Commissioner Solis,
Yes.
Commissioner Elguyer,
Yes.
Commissioner Bonnet,
Yes.
Commissioner Lautner,
Yes.
Commissioner Robbins,
Yes.
Commissioner Rushton.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
We apologize for rushing here.
And that brings us to the tower project award.
Well, maybe Jen should go right away.
Yeah, Jen.
She did give me some information, so hopefully she doesn't need to come back up here, but in the board packet, you were able to get the revised proposal from Midway Electronics for the proposed tower site here at the Government Center. We were able to negotiate with them in order to bring that price point back into line with what we would like to see for this tower site and still be the tower that we have envisioned. So before you is the proposal number 2, which we've saved over $230,000. And Jen was able to provide to me the communications tower fund. We do have the cash balance that would be able to cover this. It would not have a whole lot of leeway after
We
that.
Spent a bunch of money.
We
So I
did.
might wanna double check.
Yeah, yes.
So I looked at this, so good job. You really made a big difference. And I see, you know, a huge chunk was the shelter. How did you get into that? So you just did a good job negotiating, told them they could do it for less? Would you?
Well, what we did is with the tower, we had a very beefy tower identified. We had 5 cell carriers identified for this tower. Realistically, for the placement, cell carriers aren't going to be down to where the 5th level would be, you know, the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It wouldn't be conducive for their equipment. So we moved it back to 4 cell carriers and some ISPs. So that was able to bring the tower structure itself to be a lighter tower. The foundation then got a little smaller, was not as much there. So it did cascade into some cost savings when we went that route.
Yeah, good job. Big cost savings. And then we're gonna use, as far as the shelter, just.
There is basically a cabinet. Instead of a shelter building, it's just a cabinet that has its own HVAC system. It'll be protected from the elements.
Thank you.
Well, it did appear that they didn't believe that the renters would use that building anyway.
Correct. So they were very adamant that the cell carriers wouldn't want to occupy that. We had identified it for ISPs and whatnot. They probably won't need anything more than the tower or the rack cabinet that we've identified. They can get their own for, you know, $15,000.
So do we want to make a motion to award this?
We do.
Well, I think you'd want to authorize the development of a contract, because we don't have a contract, this is just their proposal. So just like the point and just what the thing, your next step would be authorize Matt and I to work with legal counsel to develop a contract.
And if I
And
may.
then that would come back to the board then.
Yeah. Bottom line is what you're asking for is $413,150. Isn't that the amount you're asking for?
I would ask for the 435,650. There were some additional grounding requirements that they recommend for cell carriers that they have been looking for around the nation, just some additional grounding requirements. And then they included the licensing and registration fees, which were not part of the RFP. Our tower consultant did not have that as part of the previous ones, so I did not know any better. But they were forthcoming with that information and made it part of this whole project instead of coming back to you later.
So it includes our exhibit B, those items that are listed.
Yes.
Okay.
That we direct our administrator to work with Midway
Electronics.
Electronics Incorporated to develop a contract for construction of a cell tower on the government campus. In the amount of up to $435,650. The funds to come from the tower.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, is that included in part of your motion?
Just now.
Just now.
Tower fund?
Tower fund, yeah.
It's called the Capital Building Tower Fund.
Okay.
So
Is
that
there
Is there a capital building tower?
Is there enough in there?
What Matt and I had talked about, you have, excuse me, several. Yep, so in your capital improvement tower fund, you don't have anything budgeted. Since we were holding off to purchase or to erect a tower, there's 45,000 there, 45,008. And then in the current tower fund, there is 443. So I let Matt know that with the revenues that he's going to be bringing in, which is about 367, that he should have 300,000. I will let you know that when you're going into your 2023 budget, by erecting this tower using these funds, you will most likely not be maintaining at least 1 year of dispatch. That will then come from your general fund. So you take out of the tower fund, out of your lease agreements, 195,000. So it will have a domino effect in essence to the general fund in 2023.
But at this point, you don't have to have a fund amount. You're just authorized us to develop
Yep.
a contract.
Yep.
So you can have that
And
discussion.
if this comes out of the ARPA funds, then it doesn't really affect the tower.
Correct.
If we get more funds.
Right. Well,
Plus,
we don't have.
So right now, I think you're just looking for your motion to enter into
Yeah.
agreement and
Yeah,
then
you don't have to worry about the
the
funding.
funding, yeah, the funding.
Said up until funding for.
Yep.
Well, that's not quite a true statement. We do have to consider our funding.
You have to
Yes.
consider it, but for the
Yes.
motion,
Correct.
yeah. You-
Right
so
now. Mhm.
Upon the contract being developed, Matt and I will come back with a motion, just like today, with all the funding. At that point, you're going to agree the contract, the proposal, and where the funding is coming from. But that's the next step.
So put Jenna on notice for that meeting.
Yes, Jen will be on notice for all meetings.
I'll be there.
From now on. Jen, you're on notice.
Question, Matt, in terms of clients on that tower, bringing in revenues, there will be, are they transferring from the other or just adding, will these be new clients? I know there'll be a new ISP potentially, but will the others be new?
As far as AT&T, I am not sure if they would discontinue tower service in the area to get to this point, or just add more equipment onto our towers and save them all. That I do not know. Verizon would be looking to expand to this location as well.
So, okay, great.
Oh, yeah.
More money. Okay.
Commissioner Locke.
Yes, thank you. My question was basically along the same lines, but different. So how much do you bring in a month to replenish?
At a tower site?
Your tower funds, what do we grow a month?
It would all depend on the equipment that they put on the tower, but if you're just talking like AT&T, typically a monthly rent at a tower site is right around $3,500.
And what about 3?
Have at least 2, and then the ISP is very motivated in getting there, so yeah, it's very likely we could have 3.
So this, the vote will be on, sets the administrator to set up the contract. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Motion passes.
I have
Yes,
one
go
more
ahead.
tower.
Yeah.
The other tower that we want to build in Northport for 911. Where are we with that one?
We are still identifying a good location. We did identify 3 possible locations. It's doing a propagation study in order to see what location would be able to serve the most for the township. I did go out and speak with a broadband firm about doing an expansion project just for the township. Their proposal was very good, and interestingly enough, they had 3 tower sites that they wanted to build in Leelanau Township. The price point was too high, but there was a lot of good points, and their proposal was basically just for broadband. It didn't really touch cellular, which is one of the main focuses for this expansion project. So I'm going to be giving that information to the township supervisor so that we can decide what good points we want to take from it and move forward with the project that they would like.
So I would say for last Friday, 911 before broadband, so let's get that 911.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, does that tower need to be in Northport?
What we were talking about with the township officials would be another 195-foot tower. What was in the proposal, the 3 towers were like 3 150-foot towers. They would still be above the zoning threshold, but Leelanau Township is very conducive to tower building.
So the towers being the same height as what we're erecting here, would the cost be comparable?
It would be, depending on, here's an interesting part that I found out through this RFP process. If we put 911 communication equipment on that tower, it has to be rated at a higher level and therefore a more expensive tower. If we did not have any 911 equipment on there and just identified it for cellular use only, it would be a cheaper tower. It would not have to be as beefy per se. So I'm going to just say that it would be comparable, but there's a good chance that it could come under what we're looking at here.
But our goal is to afford the 911 service to that northern part of our county. Is that not the?
That would be the radio side of it. There is some concern from township officials that the radios are not hitting where they're supposed to be. I haven't really had that complaint brought to me outside of that meeting. So I'm less confident that that's an
What's
issue.
the fire chief say?
He was in support of the radio equipment, but he has still not talked to me about it. So,
Well, you're doing your due diligence.
yes,
You're gonna look
yes.
at all that.
I'm gonna look at all the options. I do want to make sure that we do get the best bang for our buck. We don't want another $700,000 proposal before us.
Well, the concern I have in regards to not putting the proper equipment up the first time is these fire departments coming back to the county and say, you didn't do what you should have done to begin
True.
with. So, you know, if we take care of those needs initially, then we don't have to go back and add to that tower.
Mhm.
If we even have that opportunity to do that.
Right. Yeah, a lot of those questions come from whether we do away with the tower that's at the township hall or not. If we do, then we would definitely want to have radio communication equipment on that tower.
Okay, well, we'll leave it to you to come back to us.
Will do.
And the reality is the fire chief there is very vocal and
Yes.
we'll be looking at due diligence every step of the way and
Yeah.
will share his thoughts with us on a very regular basis.
I know.
Yeah, that's right. We don't want to talk about that. So that I'm sure he will be.
Okay.
Well, this has
Thank you.
been a lot of work for Matt, as you know, this is not part of his duties. He wasn't expecting to become a tower expert when he took this job, so thank you, Matt, for all your effort. I know it's been
Thank
a
you.
lot of work behind the scenes.
Yes.
He's
it has
just
been.
honing his skills. that's
Yes.
all.
Right,
For Anzaldi Tower Consultant Incorporated.
there you go.
Thank you. Then that bring us to the lower level renovation.
Yeah, this is a follow-up to our discussions, and we have 2 members of the health department here. And I'll just give a brief overview, and Eric, you can take over. So when the suggestion came up from Commissioner Buddick back in the fall, I met with these 2 representatives from the health department and along with our engineer to look at, even if it's a possible move, and what would work and what could not work. We looked at the space that's commonly referred to as the ugly room. We looked at the space that's the exercise room and cages and see what could happen. So both Eric and Dodie were here. We looked at different options. One of the things that we came up with is the possibility of maybe not moving the entire health department, but at least a portion of it. And I believe Eric, well, both of you agreed that your priority would be is that the environmental health? Is that the proper term?
Correct.
Sorry.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the square footage that they're looking for is pretty compatible to the space across from the conservation district, which is considered the ugly room. It will take up all that space. And so As you saw, we had a little bit of a delay due to some illness, but our consultant told us that the environmental health part could fit into that ugly room and serve their needs. As I understand, many clients who come to you also go through the conservation district
Correct.
and to Steve, so it made sense in that respect.
Well, without question.
Yeah.
Because you've got building department that in order to get a building permit, you have to go there first, and then you have to come to the health department to get a well and septic permit depending. Recently, there's been a change with the 911 numbers on addresses, so you have to go to the planning department to get an address for a garage if you have plumbing in it and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of benefit to being located in this building, because as a constituent of yours, if I needed to get my permits, I can do it all right here versus here, bounce to our building, come back here, and just back and forth and back and forth. It also avoids confusion. We have the same thing down in Benzie County, where if I don't know any better and I've never done it before, I come to this building, I go to the building department, and then I figure everything else is here. Lots of times we get people looking for building department in our office, and we have to send them down here and vice versa. So as a citizen, it makes sense for us to be in this building, definitely the environmental health part. The ugly room is actually quite apropos for what we do and the septic systems that we look at. So I'm kind of fond of that name already, but it just makes sense for us to be located in a building where all of our constituents are, and that we need to talk to on a daily basis anyway. We're always in communication with building department and planning and soil erosion and all of that, just for all the things that we do, because that's what we do. So it makes sense for us to be in that location.
The services that you provide, can the citizens in the county access permits online like they do in our building codes department?
Such as if somebody has acquired a permit, can you see if they have a permit, like a neighbor sort of
Can they
thing?
get a
or-
permit over the internet?
So what we do and our services are that if you apply online, and we are actually upgrading that, and hopefully we'll be online with new modern applications where a constituent can apply and pay for a permit online. We don't issue a permit right away because we go out to the field and we have to do soil borings to design something. But could it all be done digitally? Yes.
Okay. Because my next question is, with you locating here in this building, Benzie County constituents would have to come here.
No,
No?
no. So we have two offices, one for Leelanau, which is
And
right
one
in
for
Lake
them.
Lee,
Okay,
correct, yes.
I didn't know that.
Mhm.
So you have a whole different department that works?
So
Or do you have both departments?
I had both departments.
So how's that gonna work out for you? You're gonna be here so many days a week and over there so many days a week?
That's the way it works right now, yes. If in the space we're in now, I do not have a place to land when I come up here. I have to work out of actually a lab room where you would see a client for the personal health side of things. So I don't spend a lot of time up here because I don't have access to a office or the computers and that sort of thing. So would that change if we have the space here? Yes, it would, because we'd have a lot more space, someplace for me to land. Because right now our offices are such that it would fill half this room, and that's all we have for space at the moment.
You've got in your drawings spaces for 5 offices.
Mhm. Correct.
Do you have 5?
No. So currently I have 3 employees that are working in Leelanau. No.
Just for Leelanau?
Yeah, so I'm just strictly talking Leelanau. So I have 4 employees, field staff down in Benzie. There are 3 field staff in Leelanau. 2 secretarial support in Leelanau. So 5 total in my department in Leelanau and 5 total down in Benzie as well.
2 secretaries, 3 field, and then yourself.
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
You'll be here part-time.
Correct. Mhm.
Okay. Your field officers, they're pretty much in the field during the day, daytime hours, and come in, do their reports, file
They-
their paperwork, that kind of thing.
It's kind of like a school, a teacher. They have an office hour for the most part. So people can call them up, get in touch with them, stop into the office and have a meeting and that sort of thing.
This
Mhm.
plan that you presented,
Mhm.
is this a plan that you're planning on implementing, or is this just a sample?
That's essentially a sample. That's what would be ideal, obviously,
Well,
but
the
could it
reason I asked
change?
that
Mhm.
is I see you have a break room in here, but we do have a break room downstairs.
Just learned that today, as a matter of
Yeah,
fact. So,
so-
yep. Mhm.
That actually would provide you with a little bit more storage.
Correct, which we could
Or-
definitely use.
Or our senior services department has used this room in the past. I'm not quite sure what their storage needs are.
We would probably have to move everything that's in that room to the fitness room and lose some of this fitness equipment, but there is space there. I think it would work. If the board wishes to proceed further, this is just a drawing, I believe, you came up with.
Correct, yes.
So we would have to get an architect and engineer to come up and meet, as we did with the conservation district, the process, because some of you run board, some of you do not. First step was the board agreed in general with the concept. Then what they did is authorized me to work with an architect engineer, and they worked with the conservation district to come up with a solid plan and a cost estimate before the board made a final decision. And then we worked out the financing, because just like with the health department, the county allocates X dollars. So we took some of the money that we were paying on an annual basis to the conservation district, and they were renting space, and they were paying for electricity and internet. All that was, we came up with a new formula to make it work financially. And our payback was about
4 years. I think.
Yeah, I think we said 5 years. I think we were a little bit ahead of that.
Commissioner, or were you not?
I have one more question. By moving to this building, how does that offset the cost for the health department? Or will the cost be offset?
I don't know yet. I don't know, the financial impact of what our rent would be here. I don't know what our financial obligation would be yet. I know we are crowded over in our existing space now, so if environmental health were to move out of there, personal health would take over that space.
I'm just wondering, there's gonna be a cost in order to put your department downstairs. And so what I'm trying to figure out is what our return on the investment will be. So we're really not there yet, are we?
Oh, no. If there's broad consensus to take us to the next level would be for me to work at an architectural engineering firm and Mr. Johnson to answer those, and with Godey to answer those questions. And it's not gonna be a quick response. It takes a lot of thought. When we made a decision with the conservation district, it took us about 6 to 8 months to get all those questions answered before the board made a decision. So if there's consensus to move forward, first step would be for me to work with an architectural engineer firm and work with Mr. Johnson and Mr. Putnam here to answer all those questions and come back at some point to you with a report that says, okay, this is what you want, because obviously this may not be the final. This is just something that I think you just gave me that I gave to the architects just to come up with a ballpark number. So if you know, from my memo from last couple weeks ago, anywhere between 411 and 500 some thousand dollars.
Yes, thank you. I don't think we should waste any more time moving forward on this project. I don't think it's going to serve the health department in the long term. We're going to be separating the health from environmental. I think the health department ought to be, we're looking at one location to have all of their services in, and we can't fit them in here. I haven't had anyone call me and say, hey, boy, I sure wish you'd move the health department into your building. I haven't received a single call that's told me that. Deborah mentioned something I was going to mention, and that's where I think you should move to online permitting as soon as possible, so you have less and less walk-in traffic. And it also allows people to work in I'm going to say more efficient ways. Yes, I know use that word. I poked my head in that storage room last week, and it is over half full. It has all of our senior services. There's wheelchairs and walkers and shower seats and all sorts of things. That's their storage. And there's a caged area where the conservation district is their storage. So I poked my head back in across the road. I said, hey, how do you guys feel about losing your storage? And I'm not thrilled about it. So that means you're going to have to move their storage down the hall to the last available space we have left in this building. Put a cage down there for conservation district storage, and probably a cage down there for senior services to have some storage. You've already said we have to take out some exercise equipment, which means I guess that we don't really care about the health of our employees, which is kind of ironic since we're talking about health department. And it's crowding us down there. And I really don't see that that's going to serve all of our general public in the long term, just to keep squeezing in down there. We don't have that much room left over. So I'm opposed to us going any further and wasting any more time. I think we need to look at a long-term solution for the health department, and because it doesn't fit here. And pretty soon we're going to be into the caged area of the rest of our departments, and put a pole barn out back for them to go out in inclement weather and go after the wreckers. I just not opposed to it.
But I would say that I think it's essential really to move them here. But myself, I see it as having worked in construction, do the permits, try to deal with that, and constantly getting the answers. And people do ask me about that. So about moving them here and making it much simpler for anybody who's working in construction. So that's why I suggested it, because I think it's an ideal situation. And we have plenty of storage. It would be really, I don't think it would be too hard on our employees to walk down the hall. That might be getting some exercise right there. So I would, I hope that we can move forward with this and have our administrator look into it and get the cost so we can make an educated decision about it. But I just think that it's ideal at this time. And if we have the ARPA funds to use for it, it can help the county all the way through for many years to come. Commissioner Soltis.
I realize it would separate the health department, and I'm sure have you had your choices, you'd like to remain all together. And I also know that that's not a choice you have right now, and probably won't have for quite some time, if ever. But I think there's a good fit for environmental health here, because for all the reasons we've already heard. I mean, it fits with drain commission, it fits with everything that has to do with construction and the things that environmental health does. So I would really favor taking the next step to look at it and see if we can't make this a reality, because you are very crowded over there. You have, as you said, you don't have a landing space, and it means that everybody else is very pinched too. If it even just relieved the pressure so that the personal health had a little bit more space, because you're very crammed also in the current situation. So I would support moving forward with this. I really would. I think it's beneficial for the residents of our county.
Would you make that motion?
Yes, well, I think to be the motion. Okay, let's see if we get this one right. I would like to, I moved to authorize our administrator to examine the possibility of relocating the Leelanau District Health Department offices that are currently at the Montessori School Building to the lower level of the government center.
Just for clarification, we're just talking about environmental health,
Right,
not all the offices at the most.
right, just the environment, right, I didn't put that in there. If you could have that, Allison.
Any other questions or statements? Let's just have a roll call vote on this one.
Commissioner Sotis Little,
Yes.
Commissioner Alguier,
Yes.
Chairman Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Lautner,
No.
Commissioner Robbins,
Yes.
Commissioner Rushton.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-1.
In the first step, I'll get a firm quote from our architectural engineering team, what their cost will be. And I'll let you know that hopefully by next Tuesday. Because I don't think it'll be substantial. I think we take from Buildings and Grounds Fund for our budget, but I don't want to surprise anyone. So let me get the estimate first. I'll bring it back and then I'll work with these two to come up with a plan, assuming the costs are reasonable.
Yeah, I would be anxious on the costs.
Yeah.
We all.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think so we've done. Look into it.
Well, thank you for reaching out to us and offering that. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Then that brings us to administrator search.
Yeah, based on our discussion last time, I reached 4 different options I researched. One is the Michigan Association of Counties, see if they could help counties. I was surprised they do not offer that service, but they do. They're certainly willing to help with the advertising, the promotions, getting emails out to counties about the vacancy, but they don't actually get involved with the search process. Then I reached out to the Michigan Leadership Institute, because I've been getting emails from them. They are long-term looking at expanding to county and other forms of government. However, right now, they're not to the point yet. They are focusing on school superintendent searches, and that's what their expertise is. But they are looking at expanding in the future. Then I reached out to the Michigan Municipal League, and you have a proposal from them, but it's from $17,000 to $23,000. If you want my personal views, I think that's excessive. I think we're an attractive situation here. I've already had 3 potential people call me about interest. So I think what you really need is someone to work with all of you to work on the traits and qualities you want your next administrator. So I reached out to Matt McCulley, who's the director, CEO of Networks Northwest, because I know they have helped other units of government. And he said he himself would be willing to work with the county at no cost to work with you to develop the criteria, help screen the resumes and so forth. The actual posting, advertising, we can handle that ourselves, you know. But I think, and I talked to Matt specifically on Friday to make sure, I didn't want to bring up his name and speak on his behalf. But he was very willing to work with the 7 of you. One of the first things he wanted to do is would have a session to have you set the criteria, which is basically, if you look with Michigan Municipal League, that's kind of what they're proposing also. But if you want my personal views, I think you have expertise between the 7 of you. Internally, we can do the posting, we can do the advertising. Mac is willing to get the word out at no cost. But I think anyone looking at this job will want to know, what are you looking for in the criteria? And I think that's where you have to focus. And Matt said he would be glad to lead you through a discussion to help you get to that goal.
Any other?
Yes, thank you. I think that's an excellent suggestion. Thank you very much for following that.
Yeah, and you know, I looked at their proposal, and that's why it sounds almost like
Yeah.
the same thing we can do, so.
I can tell you in my former life, I've been through this on both sides, being on the candidate side, but also when I left Buckley Community Schools, they actually asked me to do the search for my replacement. It's not that complicated. I think if you have a session with Matt, 1 or 2 sessions, and what you really need to do is clarify with some of you what you're looking for the next person, because out of fairness to 7 of you, out of fairness to people applying for the job, that's what they want to know.
But I did think it was a good of Commissioner Russell to bring that up, so at least to look into it and see.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm glad that we at least did that.
Yeah, I was under the impression that Mac does that because I get their emails on openings, everything, so I assume they were always involved with those, but they simply pass it on. So whatever we come up with, they'd be glad to get the word out to, you know, you get those updates on a weekly basis. I also get them throughout the week, and so they would help us with the promotion of that vacancy.
All right.
So
Any
does
other
everyone,
questions or anything? We'll just move forward with.
does everyone feel comfortable with that as well?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Okay, then I'll check with Matt. At some point, I'll have him come to the board meeting. You can have a dialogue with him, how you wish to proceed.
If he wants to come to the board meeting, if he wants a special meeting.
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
I'll check with him and see.
The whole,
Yeah.
you know. All right, thank you for that. Then that brings us to future meetings and topics.
I don't believe we have a date scheduled for it.
No, we don't.
And also, can I,
Go ahead.
we have Housing North that's been sitting here patiently all that. And I think they have a very interesting proposal. Again, hearing from many, many, many counties in our meetings in Washington, most counties are going to a full-time position, in-house housing coordinators. Housing North is offering us a really unique opportunity to just partially help fund a coordinator that they will hire. They will pay benefits. They will do all that. We avoid hiring. And Commissioner Bunnick did say, well, I thought we agreed we wouldn't pay for any people. My interpretation of that is that we would not hire someone to be on our staff and then be involved in their retirement funding and health funding, et cetera. So I think their 20,000 to help them have a housing coordinator, again, helps us take a step for our people at really minimal cost. And that is a very tiny piece of our funds. So, yes, I'm sorry, you want to say something? Go ahead.
She's happy.
Oh, okay.
Is this commissioner comment time?
This is, we're talking about future meeting topics.
Except that we said we would discuss
Okay.
other things involved in housing at the end of the meeting. Or we put that off till the end of the meeting, so we can't just cut that off. So I'm taking advantage of that.
So
proposal.
you're talking about back when we did B funding recommendations? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, yes. We said we would put that at the end of the meeting.
All right, well, I thought I clarified that, but I thought that was really considered home stretch project update funding recommendations on that. And I thought that's what we did.
I think, and what I heard was any other additional funding things. We
I think
do.
that was, yeah, what the administrator said, but that wasn't what the board said.
Did the whole board say that?
That was the other things on the agenda is what I understood.
Because we do have a proposal
It's
on
not
that
on the
topic
agenda today.
from Homestretch, and they have been here.
Well, we could put that on the next meeting if it's gonna be, but that's, what we're talking here is about future meeting dates and topics. So
Well,
if you
actually-
want to put that on the next meeting date, as one of the topics.
So you're saying that our statement that we were moving B till the end of the meeting, then we're not doing that now?
I don't think that, no, I never, that was
Because
not.
that was the agreement upon which we kept moving.
I think what you were saying is deal with the other things on the agenda first, which was kind of implied that we would deal with Housing North because they're sitting here, and it was submitted as part of a package. I thought we would be.
So your understanding was that we were gonna do that later with any other people who showed up?
Well, with Housing North, because they came out as part of the package, it included their proposal.
And the reason it was there, because Commissioner Wessel asked to be put on the agenda. And then when the meeting notice went out, 3 of you signed this agenda, the way it was stated.
Right.
So it didn't make it on the agenda officially.
Well, no one asked to have it put on the agenda.
Except that it was in our packet, so it was
It
presumed
was a,
that
it was a letter
me.
that came. The only reason Jonathan asked me to put on the agenda, I told him he could not be on the agenda unless there was a request from the commission. So I actually turned down his request to be on the agenda pending it had to come from the commissioner. What you had in the packet was a letter that we received from Ms. Brown.
And I presumed that that was part of the.
I think, Mr. Chairman, if I may, you were just saying we can put it on
Yeah.
our next agenda. We
Yes.
were about to set the meeting for. I apologize for you having to come back again, but I do support the effort you're doing, and I just like to clarify that because this person that would be this resource that's added would be for Leelanau County, not for the whole area. So I think that's something that kind of gets lost in the shuffle.
So that'll be one topic for the next meeting.
Yeah, if
You got a topic
Yes.
for the next.
if you pick a meeting date, we will send out just like for special meetings.
Right.
A meeting knows that 3 of you have to sign off on. So any of you can add anything to the agenda.
So are there any other topics that we want to talk about at the next meeting?
You'd like to review all the requests at some point and give those people that. What happened is I'm getting calls from people asking what's the status of their request. So maybe just a general review.
Well,
And make some final
we owe
decision.
them to that,
Yeah.
at least, you know.
And I think you're pretty close to that end of the project, right?
Right.
So I think it'd be appropriate just to have a general review. You made some decisions on some of them already. And just so out of fairness, people, there's so many proposals, maybe give them a firm yes or no, because I assume there's some that you probably have strong feelings that you're not gonna fund. So let those know, and the other ones you still can put off until further decisions. Because remember, you really have to December 2024 to make a decision.
Until we find out if we have any more money to spend, I don't think we should bring in any more. I think we should let people know that right now, our funds have been committed and not move forward with any other spending at this point, period. I think this next meeting we ought to be concentrating on what we've committed to. And we've got this fiber, we're gonna have this fiber project to work on. And towers. And I don't know where else any more money is going to come from unless some more comes in. So until we have a firm idea of more money, I don't think we should be bringing in any more projects to fund ARPA dollars. And to be clear, that was what the board said. We were not going to be spending money on people, positions, salaries, for however you want to put it. We fund this salary, that's what I told them at Housing Action. If we fund it this year, they will expect to be funded next year, and they'll be expect to be funded the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that. It will never go away. That is why we chose not to spend money on salaries and positions.
Our tower is covered under the tower fund, so that won't come out of the ARPA. We've committed the 3.2 and the 1.25 so far out of the 4.2. And some amount of money to look at the possibility of moving the environmental health into this space. But we still have 875, right? So we do have some monies that are still not totally committed. The one thing I do know is Housing North is looking at grants in the future. They're not expecting this request to come each year. I know. I appreciate what you're saying, Commissioner Lauder, because I know that's always the concern. But I'm pretty impressed with this organization and how they've delivered on what they've said. So I do feel that we will not see them again. But we do have more money that is not totally committed yet. That's my only point I was trying to.
So you're just not looking at the 1.2? We're just not looking
Well,
at that?
the 1.2, I didn't know if there was any more commitment to take that out of the 4.2 than what we have. I'd love it, yes, but
Commissioner Elder.
And I would just like to state once more that if we are funding 20,000 a year until they can get permanent funding, we're getting the deal of the century. Most, as I said, most counties, because of how severe this issue is and how important it is for our people and our businesses and our economy and our children, most people are having to hire someone on their staff to fulfill this need, and we have an opportunity to meet this need in a really, really, really economic way. So I think if our headline in Leelanau Enterprise is Leelanau County decides not to do anything about housing, you're on your own. Boy, I don't want to see that.
Leelanau County isn't doing nothing about housing. Leelanau County has enacted housing.
Commissioner
action.
Rushton has her hand raised.
I know, but
Thank you. And we're really supposed to be talking about a date and topics. You know, not hardly things. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we're in an awful big hurry to spend this money before it all comes to our table. I was asked to have this board consider refunding the dollars back to the taxpayers as it comes from the taxpayers, or it's got to be paid back by the taxpayers. And in order to give a lift to every taxpayer in our county, it would be reasonable to think to give everybody a refund. I don't hear anybody talking about spreading the wealth among all taxpayers in our county. So if we're going to talk about adding new things to the table, that'll be first on my list.
support it.
And just, you cannot use ARPA fund to lower taxes or pay for.
We can create something. This
You
board
have
is
to-
very creative.
You could do is lower your tax rate, but it can't be linked to the ARPA fund.
Well, there we go. Okay. I like that idea even better.
Anyway, we're still looking for a date.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, could I make a comment, please?
certainly. Everybody else is.
Thank you. I think we've looked at a lot of really good proposals, and I think we do need to consider some of the ones in mental health and some more on the housing and some of the other ones on infrastructure. I would favor not proceeding too fast and see how we might do with some grants and how we might do with getting some of that state and federal extra dollar. I don't want to say no too soon, but I think we need to be cautious as we move forward.
Well, I do think we need to give some of them an answer at some point. So, I mean, I would agree to hit on the next thing to go review the topics and see ones that we are going to eliminate, at least give them a no. I know nobody wants to do that, but that would be fair to them instead of keeping them hanging on. So, I mean, I don't know when are you coming back, Ty?
23rd.
I will be there for the board meeting,
Okay,
but not the executive board meeting.
right, so that's the 15th.
Yes,
Yeah, so I mean, if we looked at sometime after that, the 16th, 17th, 18th.
How about we put it on the agenda for the executive and regular session, you can pick a date.
Let's do that.
I don't think you're gonna find a meeting date before that anyway. So that way y'all have a chance to look at it, think about it, look at your calendars, and maybe pick a date in the March or first part of April.
And maybe we get a summary of the amount that we've committed, you know, because
Well, we are having a budget meeting on the 23rd, I believe, so maybe after that.
All right.
That way we'd have all the numbers, and so we don't surprise Jen like we did today, and she did a great job here.
Yeah.
But how about if I put it on the agenda for the executive, and we just move it forward, and on the 15th, when everyone's here, talk about how you wish to proceed. That'll give you time to think about it also.
I like that, yes.
and I will add a wrinkle. Gotta have wrinkles. I leave on the 16th of March and return in time for the executive meeting in April. I'll be returning on the 10th.
One of my logics waiting for the 15th, I may have more of an update on the contract with towers. I may have more update on the cost downstairs and everything, which is, I think, will play a factor in how you decide. So until you have that information.
Right, I think they're right. We've got money committed.
Yeah.
Any other, so we're gonna wait till, we'll just.
I'll put it on the agenda,
executive
yeah, and we can look at, and we'll wait to have that discussion on the 15th. I don't think I'll have updates by next Tuesday, but we can just move it forward. I'll just put ARPA on the agenda and we can move it forward.
Okay.
If everyone's in agreement with that. And that'll give you time to think about what you want on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay. Then that would bring us to public comment.
I would say.
Yes.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I just want to, first of all, thank you for taking the time to go over all this.
Introduce yourself.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm Yarrow Brown with Housing North. I do live in Leelanau County. Do you need my address? Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that the proposal in front of you was a clarification on what we're providing, which is a contract for services. And I can provide an example of what that contract would look like. We have 3 other counties that are supporting this in the same way. Emmett County, Charlevoix County. Emmett County is doing it more in a different way, but they are supporting this program. And Manistee County has agreed to support this with $20,000 a year with the contract. I also just wanted to clarify that our request is part of that bigger request that came through the Housing Action Committee. So at some point, if possible, I would request that you put that maybe back on the agenda to discuss, because there was many components involved in that, including projects like John at Homestretch. So if we can at all provide clarity through the Housing Action Committee or through Housing North on that, which does include multiple options to support housing in the community, I would encourage that. And would like some clarification maybe on the process for Wendy and I. So if we do want to get on the agenda and present in the same way John did, we would have that opportunity. So that's what I wanted to say, and just thank you for your time. And I do encourage you not to rush, but I do want to say time is of the essence, because we do need to move forward to address our housing needs. But I do encourage you to take your time and make sure you do have all the information, which is what I was trying to show in my proposal to clarify what services you would get. So I'm here anytime you have questions, and really do look forward to seeing Leelanau County make a really strategic move in our community and show that you're taking a leadership role in addressing housing. So thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Wendy Irvin. I'm the CEO of Habitat for Humanity in the Grand Traverse region. Thank you again for discussing housing today. I also wanted to request that since Habitat for Humanity has come through the Housing Action Committee and Trudy did present on our behalf for the homes that we're building as well as the rehabilitation projects, I would respectfully ask that you do add us to the agenda next time when you're discussing ARPA funds, and you would consider our nonprofit affordable housing organization, who has been in this community for 36 years and has been very successful at serving families, and who knows our families better than anybody in the workforce housing. We represent the area median income from 30 up to 80. That sweet spot is really in the 50 area median income, and there are people that work in all of your well-known businesses. They work in the school districts. They have families with children that are in your school. So I, again, respectfully ask that we be added to that agenda and that we can give a presentation on behalf of 2 shovel-ready projects that we're currently working on. One is in partnership with the Land Bank Authority in Maple City for 6 houses that we're building this summer. The other project is on Bugai and 72 in partnership with New Waves Church. They own the property, and we're building 14 homes. So we are in Leelanau County. We're serving 20 families in addition to the home repair projects that we're doing. We have grown as an organization through the years, and John, just in respect to John's former comment about the Suttons Bay project, we received the RFP process contingent upon zoning approval. We didn't get zoning approval. We turned I won't even say we turned lemon into lemonade. We turned it into orange juice, baby, and we made something brilliant out of it. We're serving 6 families instead of 1. Had we been in today's environment, that never would have occurred. We know that, right? They just weren't ready at that time. But that shouldn't overshadow our 36-year success story in this region. And I do hope that you embrace housing enough to consider our work, because I guess at this moment, we're working as partners and we have to work together to overcome this. We're as a nonprofit organization, we're filling that gap. We're taking on $100,000 silent second mortgage on every house that we're selling. Our average homeowner can afford about $165,000. The market rate on the homes we're building with the Maple City, with the land bank, are $286,000. So we're filling that gap. We at least want to cover our construction costs. That's going up, as you know. So everything that John shared earlier, I can embrace, and we totally align with all the details and the statistics that he shared. But we as a nonprofit are carrying that load. And if we could get some assistance, the infrastructure cost for the project alone is about $176,000. And that's just one project. So we'd be willing to fill the gap and take on the silent second if you'd be willing to help us with some of those costs. If you can add us to the agenda, I'd respectfully appreciate that. Thank you.
Public comment?
I agree with Commissioner Wessel's commentary.
Steve, could you state your name?
Steve Mikowski, Lake Leelanau. Being cautious. Also, I agree with Commissioner Rushton about getting all the money back.
I can pass up.
Maybe some left over. I'm not sure how many of you have experienced the recession and stagflation of the mid-70s to the mid-80s. Interest rates at banks were 18% to 20%. We will be experiencing that very soon at a much worse level. It is impossible to stop at this point. And I have to say, we urge with caution on that, how we go about it. One thing I want to mention regarding anything I speak about, I'm a believer that unless the people petition this government, and they haven't petitioned any government to get free money, free debt money. It's not money, it's debt money they have to pay interest on. And they never lawfully petitioned for that. So nothing should be spent unless you give it all back to them. You should not spend a penny on any project of any kind, because it becomes a special interest project for every one of you individuals. That's what you're after. And we're leaving the people to scrape up on their own. I've given you a document. I did a survey of all county commissioners, the administrator and the clerk. You see the results of that survey. And it's very disappointing what that survey reveals. I cannot believe that this commission has proceeded with these projects with such an almost total lack of information. In the private sector, this wouldn't get beyond the first meeting. And I'm speaking about the commission removing accounting and finance and human resources functions from the clerk and establishing new departments. This happened, I believe, in May 21, where a surprise item was put on the agenda, but absolutely no information to all the commissions what it was all about. And this commission nullified your own rules and put it on the agenda. It was not even an emergency. How could we have proceeded without a demand for a need, necessity, justification study? How could we have gone ahead with it? How does this happen? So from my perspective, it looks to me that on this issue, all of you get a E or an F for your fiduciary duty and representing the people properly. Unless significant information of need, necessity, justification, including substantial reports of bad performance or whatever by independent professionals or independent consultants or others becomes available, we respectfully request this commission delay any further implementation of these costly actions regarding finance and human resources. What has happened to date appears uncharacteristic of elected officials who come to serve in public office to do a good job for the people. Now, we may come up with the same result if we go through the process, but I urge you to begin the process anew before you take any more action on these projects and hire people, because you may learn some new things, important things that would help you make a much better decision on your selection and the decisions, and particularly the selection of people. So I leave you with that thought. Again, I'm talking about the fact that I don't recall anybody from the electors coming forward and petitioning this commission to take action on removing those functions from the county clerk's office. Maybe it should happen. I do not know that, but in the absence of any specific honest study report, or particularly with an independent consultant that has interviewed the clerk completely and thoroughly in other departments, that we should have conflict. I'm done. Thank you very much.
Any other public comment? Seeing none other commissioner comments. Our turn.